and welcome to the Link Up. It's really nice to have you join us this Friday morning. You know, as usual at this time, I like to do my checkup with you to find out how you're doing, how you're feeling this morning. It's something that you can do for yourself as well on mornings or at night before you go to sleep. How are you feeling? You know, any headaches, any chills, a little fever, or, you know, that sort of thing, because we always like to tell you this is not the time for you to self-diagnose or self-medicate. Feeling a little off, talk to your doctor, and better yet, get tested. So, it's the Christmas season. Many of us will be out and about doing all sorts of things, forgetting that a pandemic is still amongst us. So, you know, it hasn't gone anywhere. So yeah, keep your doctor close at hand and make sure you do those checks. Speaking of pandemic, you know, in the pandemic, we've been hearing so much about comorbidities, and we take note of hypertension, of diabetes, cancer, that sort of thing, and how they're very susceptible to the COVID-19 virus. But there are many others out there and offshoots from those comorbidities, and I hope you bear with me because I'd like to start today's linking up with South Florida and talking to Dr. MEHTA. And Dr. MEHTA is the Director of Neurointerventional Surgery, Director of Comprehensive Stroke Program, and also Vice Chief of the Memorial Neuroscience Institute at the Memorial Healthcare System in South Florida. And I wanted to take a look at aneurysms because, you know, I lost someone many, many years ago to an aneurysm, and let's find out but what we should be looking out for. Everybody's always focused right now on COVID, but there are other things out there. What kind of symptoms, what kind of signs are we looking for? And happily that there is now, you know, medical advancement in the care of aneurysms. So perhaps the percentage of surviving one is a lot better. And we'll find out from Dr. BRIJESH MEHTA about that. And then we journey to South Africa and link up with one of our South African colleagues, Pearl MAGUBANE. And Pearl is a news reporter in their radio department at South Africa Broadcasting Corporation. She's been a journalist for over 13 years. And we linked up with her earlier and chatted about the COVID-19 virus, about Delta, how it was affecting them earlier this year, not realizing that we'd be back again now to talk about a new variant. So we'll be joining Pearl. And the thing is how life happens. One of my other South African guests messaged me just yesterday after we had tied up everything, confirmed, we chatted and so on, and then messaged me yesterday to say that unfortunately he couldn't be a part of the program today because he's been diagnosed with COVID. So, you know, it's real and it's happening all around us and very, very quickly. So this is why we always stress the importance of go and get tested. If you're not sure, if you think you might have been compromised or in a position where you might have been compromised, then it's important that you know your status. And these days that means know if you are negative or positive for COVID-19. And we'll find out from Pearl how they're disseminating the information on Omicron and sharing it with their country. And we can't forget that it's Christmas. And we come home to spend the last hour with songstress KEISHA Christian, and we celebrate the launch of her new album, her new Christmas video. And we chat as well with songwriter and musician David Thomas. He wrote the Christmas song, and if you haven't heard it as yet, believe you me, it is truly beautiful. So looking forward to that chat. It's going to be a highly informative and entertaining link up today, Friday. Remember, you can participate. That's right. We love it when you do. You can message us on CBC Barbados on our Facebook page, or you can share your comments and questions in real time. We'll be glad to share them with everyone. Coming up next, Dr. BRIJESH MEHTA joins us after the break. Some of the statistics coming out about aneurysms, especially in the US, looking at about 1 in every 50 persons in the population has a brain aneurysm. We'll find out what that is and what the symptoms are in just a little bit. But according to the Brain Aneurysm Foundation, about 40% of the patients who do suffer an aneurysm rupture do not survive on the way to the emergency room due to the high pressure within the brain from bleeding. And when you think about it, that those first few minutes and moments are highly critical, you realize how dangerous it is to mess around with time. And so right now we get an opportunity to link up with Dr. BRIJESH MEHTA, who is the Vice Chief of Memorial Neuroscience Institute at the Memorial Healthcare System. He is himself a Director of Neurointerventional Surgery. So it's nice to have you join us. Dr. MEHTA, welcome.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We hear of the word aneurysm, and we're not really sure sometimes just what exactly that means. So what circumstances can lead to an aneurysm?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. When we educate our patients in the community, what we really emphasize is that a lot of the diseases that afflict patients in the brain are similar to heart disease. So high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, especially smoking, they can have long-lasting adverse effects on the brain. And over time, what happens is it leads to the vessels becoming damaged and thinned out, and causes aneurysms to form in some of these individuals. And an aneurysm is typically like a balloon outpouching. And if a patient has uncontrolled high blood pressure, over time that jet of blood flow coming from the heart going straight to the brain, it causes increased pressure against the wall of these blood vessels, and that's how these aneurysms form. Patients are not born with this condition. It's acquired due to some of these risk factors.
So what are some of the signs? Are they silent, like how they say that hypertension is the silent killer, or are there warning signs before that people might not be aware of?
Right. So the main warning signs and symptoms is a worse headache of life. And so that's an indication that this could be the sentinel bleed or the initial leak from the aneurysm, because the headache is caused by sudden increase in the pressure inside the brain. And so our nerve fibers, the dura around the brain, it senses that something is wrong, and all of a sudden the headache that patients experience is then accompanied by neck stiffness, the nausea, vomiting, as well as progressive drowsiness, to the point where if the pressure becomes really high, then they progress to a comatose condition. Because every time the heart is pumping blood, it is actively countering that high pressure in the brain, and that's what leads to the patients becoming obtunded. And like you said, by the time they arrive to the hospital, unfortunately, many of them are not able to survive.
What is the age range you've noticed of your patients who've had aneurysms?
So the age range is variable. It all depends on, some of the risk factors we went over, as well as if there's a family history. So the studies show that, family history, if direct first-line blood relatives have a history of aneurysm, there's approximately a 20% chance that the others in the family may have it, brothers, sisters, siblings. And so we always recommend screening, if one family member has it, by getting a brain MRA or a CTA to ensure that, they also don't have aneurysms. And, essentially, beyond that, you try to control some of these other risk factors, such as the high blood pressure, smoking cessation, and so forth.
Right. And is there one gender over the other that has a propensity to have these aneurysms?
Yeah, so the data shows that women, unfortunately, have a slightly higher risk of brain aneurysm formation than men. Overall, it's not a significantly higher risk. Here at Memorial, we see about equal incidence, between men and women coming in with either incidental unruptured aneurysms versus bleeding in the brain due to a ruptured aneurysm. It's important to point out that most of the time, as we were going over some of these symptoms, aneurysms are found just as a part of routine workup for, let's say, migraine headaches or other neurological symptoms such as numbness, tingling, or a stroke workup, where they've had some mini stroke symptoms such as trouble with speech or weakness in the arm or leg. And then unrelated to this, we discover incidentally that there is an aneurysm as part of our imaging. And then we go down the pathway of discussing the treatment options and going over the management. Most of the patients we offer management, especially if they're less than 85 years of age and have a decent expected lifespan.
And is there that magic hour like there is with the stroke victim that you all are looking at, that's when you'd like to really and truthfully be able to see the patient and start to work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Because there's two types of strokes overall, there's a type of strokes that cause blockage of blood vessels in the brain, what we call an ischemic stroke. And that's where the golden hour of treatment is really helpful. Then there's the other type of stroke that's called a hemorrhagic stroke or bleeding in the brain. And that's the category under which the aneurysms come under. And so thankfully, the bleeding in the brain, the we're not limited to just the first hour or a couple of hours after patients arrive to the hospital to urgently take them to the operating room or cath lab to perform the treatment. It's more important to start some of the medical non-invasive procedures, such as controlling their blood pressure as soon as they arrive, starting them on medications to immediately start to decrease some of the pressure in the brain, reversing any blood thinners that they might be on, such as aspirin, Plavix, or some of the more powerful blood thinners like Coumadin. And then if the pressure is really high in the brain, then we, at the bedside, put in a drain. It's called an EVD, an external ventricular drain, in order to decrease that pressure from all the excess bleeding. And that's really life-saving because it buys us time to then take them to the operating room and treat them urgently.
Okay, we'll talk about the urgent care in terms of the surgical procedure. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back with Dr. Mehta. This is fascinating, and medical care has advanced so much, and we're only now beginning to be aware of that. So we thank Dr. Mehta for joining us, and we are going to be back with him just after the break. We're certainly learning a lot. I told you this program was going to be highly informative, and we're learning quite a bit from Dr. BRIJESH Mehta, who is the Vice Chief of Memorial Neuroscience Institute at the Memorial Healthcare System in South Florida. And Dr. Mehta was just telling us about the signs, the symptoms, and certain things to look out for when it comes to a brain aneurysm. But I think perhaps I might watch a bit too much television, because I have all these visions of like Grey's Anatomy and so on, with all these tubes and wires and machines and equipment. And I noticed that you, in terms of terminology, reading up on what you were, doing, there's the word minimally invasive, and I'm thinking, wait, what? No, I'm seeing machines and wires and tubes and so on. Hearing words like stents when they're doing these rushed surgeries. So can you tell us how the medical profession has advanced with care with people suffering from an aneurysm?
Yes, absolutely. So, about 25 years ago, the only way to effectively treat aneurysms in the brain was by, taking the patients to the operating room, doing a craniotomy, and performing a surgical procedure where you put a clip across the aneurysm, and that would effectively seal it up and prevent it from rupturing again. But these days, the technology has advanced so much that we no longer have to, most of the time, do an open surgery, craniotomy, and clipping. Instead, is what we call an endovascular treatment. And so that involves going through the arteries in the leg or the wrist, and under x-ray guidance, we navigate our catheters all the way up to where the aneurysm might be in the brain and enter it carefully and seal it off with FDA-approved devices, such as coils. They're made of platinum filaments, as well as stents, like you said. So they're made of nickel titanium. And that treatment now is extremely effective. In fact, research has shown that it's safer and more effective than the open surgery in patients that come in with ruptured aneurysms.
My curiosity is leading me to ask this. Do you beep when you go through machines at the airport with these metal things in your body?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we get that from patients a lot also. So thankfully, all of these devices that we use are safe for metal detectors. It does not trip them up when going through the airports, as well as they're safe for MRI. And so they're all MRI compatible. They're what we call non-ferromagnetic, and so it's safe to get an MRI even after these kind of treatments.
What's the survival rate now from this new non-invasive procedure?
Yes, so it all depends on how bad the bleeding is when a patient first arrives at the hospital. We have different scales that we use, so that based on the CT scan, we're able to prognosticate that, okay, this is an extensive bleed, and therefore let's be realistic and assist us with that conversation with the family that we will perform all the medical treatments possible in the first 24 hours and, aggressively to try to save a person's life. But at the same time, not providing a false sense of hope or expectation to the family, because if it's a extensive hemorrhage, meaning very high grade bleeding in the brain, then the likelihood of survival can be less than 10%, sometimes less than 5%. And if it's just a mild amount of bleeding and otherwise the patient is doing okay, just some headache, but they're awake, alert, following commands, then the likelihood of a full recovery is in fact excellent. So just yesterday I had a patient in her 60s that came in with headache for about a day. She thought the headache was going to go away. She slept it off. When she woke up in the morning, it was still there and in fact getting worse with neck stiffness, and then she was feeling nauseous. So decided to come into the hospital, and we found bleeding, around the surface of the brain and, all the way down to the skull base, and we detected an aneurysm. So we treated her within a matter of hours, and this morning she's doing fantastic.
Well, so what is the recovery time like for this particular, as opposed to the other one?
Yes, so typically the length of stay in the hospital after a ruptured aneurysm is about 10 to 14 days, give or take. And because it's not what we do up front that is critical, what's also important is all the subsequent post-acute care, which is monitoring the patients in a neurocritical care unit, making sure that they don't run into other medical issues, because after the bleeding in the brain, the blood vessels in the brain get very irritated, and so it results in a condition called vasospasm, and it causes narrowing and sometimes strokes after the bleeding. So I always tell the patients and their families that you're not out of the woods simply after the initial treatment in the cath lab or operating room. We have to monitor them closely in the neurocritical care unit for sometimes 2 to 3 weeks to make sure that they don't run into some of this irritation and strokes.
And life expectancy after surviving something like this? What is that like?
It's actually, if they make it through the hospital stay, we get their pressure under control in the brain, we are able to successfully seal off the aneurysm, and they don't run into any other, severe complications such as strokes, then the survival rate is excellent once they leave the hospital. You know, it's, I would say, no different than any other individual who, you know, with otherwise may not have had an aneurysm. The main thing to, you know, emphasize is blood pressure control long term, smoking cessation, and just living a healthy lifestyle. Now, you know, with bleeding in the brain, beyond the expected, you know, sort of survival rates, it's more of a cognitive issue. Sometimes a lot of patients that we see after bleeding in the brain, they have memory impairment. They're not able to organize their daily tasks and activities as effectively. And so it's more of their daily function from a cognitive standpoint can be affected. And that's where occupational therapy and physical therapy is very important.
What about diet? What do you advise them after the surgery and so on? What sort of advice do you give them?
Yeah, so absolutely, you know, avoid any foods that, you know, especially high salt intake that can also affect blood pressure and increase it. So, you know, moderate salt intake, you know, balance of vegetables, fruits, and moderate intake of any fried foods. And, you know, it's essentially no different from heart disease. We want them to, you know, have a lifestyle that is safe long term for their brain and heart health.
And Dr. Mehta, I know we're talking about aneurysms and so on, but I've heard that, you know, COVID-19 does affect patients neurologically. Many people think about the lungs and the respiratory system, but I'm being told that it also affects, you know, people neurologically. So could you tell us what you have seen within the pandemic and how you've been, you know, moving to treat people and take care of people with COVID-19?
Yes, and you know, it has been a challenging time for all of us around the world, and you know, certainly sympathize with patients and families who have been affected by COVID-19. Over the last year and a half, we'd had to completely reassess our workflow to ensure the safety, you know, first and foremost of our staff and team members and the patients and their families. So as soon as a patient comes in with a stroke into the emergency room, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate PPE in place and that we are ready to take care of them promptly and not delay the care simply because of the possibility of COVID. Because again, time is brain. The faster we can get to the patients, the better the potential outcome. And so, you know, every minute matters. As soon as they arrive to the hospital, we don our gowns and masks and gloves. We're ready because of the EMS pre-hospital stroke alert system that we've set up in South Florida. And as soon as patients arrive, they go straight to the CT scanner, just like they did before the pandemic, to see what's going on inside their brain. Is it bleeding in the brain versus blockage of an artery in the brain? And then we send off a rapid PCR test in order to make sure that they don't have COVID. And if that comes back positive, we of course take extra precautions, you know, with our PPE. But we, you know, do our best not to delay the care and treatment in the cath lab while maintaining the safety.
I can see that, you know, time would be of the essence, one way or the other. But one of the things that you said was that there's a stroke system that you all have set up, and we've got like a few minutes left. I'd just like you to briefly tell us what that entails. What is that made up of? What is it comprised of?
Sure. So, you know, so much of what we do in the hospital is dependent on how quickly we receive the information from paramedics in the field. Because the earlier we get that information in terms of what we call the stroke alert provided by the paramedics, they call through Medcom to our receiving hospital and they tell us, you know, what are the patient's signs and symptoms of a stroke, what is the onset time of the stroke symptoms, are they on any blood thinners, and that allows us to quickly get ready for the clot busting medication if they're eligible, clear the CT scanner in anticipation of the stroke patient coming in, and also activate our cath lab early, especially if we have a high index of suspicion that this could be a major stroke. And so the more reliable information that we get from the paramedics, the faster the treatment ends up being in the hospital. And our data has consistently shown that. And so having EMS work closely with our neurointerventional and stroke team has meant, significant better odds for our patients. And it's important to also understand that, not all care at all stroke centers is the same. The care that we provide here at Memorial, we're a comprehensive stroke center by national accreditation. So that means we have 24/7 availability of our neurosurgical and stroke staff so that we can treat these patients with our advanced technologies and medications.
How do you, there's a phrase, physician heal thyself. How do you take care of Dr. Mehta?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In order to ensure that we are there for our patients and families and able to take good care of them, definitely, especially during the pandemic, we had to take, good care of ourselves. That means, enough sleep, exercise, the same things that we advocate for our patients and their families. Because if we're not there in a healthy way to care for them, then ultimately the outcomes can suffer. And so important to take care of ourselves and our staff as much as possible.
Thank you so much, Dr. BRIJESH Mehta. It's really been an honor having you with us here today on the Link Up, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for sharing the knowledge of the work that you're doing. We hope that you continue to stay safe and to stay well. All the best to you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much to Dr. BRIJESH Mehta. And certainly we've heard, constantly about the importance of low sodium, low fat, low sugar. For some people, low carb, more veg and more protein, that sort of thing, exercise. Right. This is a season, though, for high sugar, high salt, high fat. Okay, perhaps moderation, yeah? Good message for us all. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. There are some people that you see day to day, or perhaps not day to day. It's been a long time since you've seen them, but when you do, it's as if that, you've not lost contact. I remember many, many years ago seeing young Keisha Christian on the stage and thinking, wow, you know, the genes from her dad, Keith, that was, you know, definitely passed on. And it's so good to see how she has developed over the years. She's been sending out music during the pandemic, keeping us all uplifted with her talent and the talent of her friends. And she's just released a Christmas song, which we're going to share a little later on. But one of my favorites from Keisha is this one, a cover of Knocking on Heaven's Door. love it. I too love it. It came out last year at a perfect time when I think we just needed, some uplifting. And it was great. So thank you very much, KEISHA, for sharing that one with me at the time, and I've been playing it often. And it's really nice to have you join me on the link up. Finally.
Yeah. Finally,
So many years. I was sharing that, I knew you when you were little, and it's been a joy to see how you've grown and bloomed. And so let's play catch up right now.
Right.
Okay. Let's go back before, knocking on heaven's door, because we know that Randy Crawford is a favorite of yours. I remember that from radio days. So let's talk about, what you've been doing. How has life been? Talk to me.
Well, as you can see, I've been in record mode. Most know me obviously for more calypso and stuff, but as you said, I've always had a real passion to do what I call variety music. I love music. I'm a music lover, and since 2017, I more actively brought that to the public domain. So I would have been on the hotel circuit honing that craft for a bit of a while. But again, I hadn't done any, outside of that, any real major performances or recordings. So 2017 was like basically my first time really showcasing that more versatile side to the Barbadian public. I did put a band together, and I did a segment. I can't remember which I think it's a page. Yeah, I can't remember which night it was for Carrie Festa, and that was good. And then it just really just went on from there. So, you've been hearing some of the works. I was very passionate. My dad is one of the veteran artists. I'm very passionate about the give back. I'm very passionate about acknowledging, the Star Wars and giving some new breath of life to songs who most would consider older, but they're still really great pieces of work. And we started to engage what I call the modernization of Barbadian songs. And some would have heard my version of the Crimea River from Jackie Wopo, and the iconic Emerson.
I'm going to play that a little while later.
So.
Yeah, but but I noticed though that there's a jazz styling, even though you say variety music.
Right.
There's a jazz styling in there, a bit of soul as well, R&B. So
very much me.
Definitely, yeah. So you said that you're a lover of music. So where did that love of music come from? Is it genetic? Did it come from your dad? Was that what you were growing up listening to over the years?
Yeah, I mean, you are what you're surrounded by. Anyone
exactly.
knows, who my dad is, he's been one of the, founding members in a lot of the earliest stages of our industry, be it folk and calypso. But he was not just that. I keep saying my household, it was a variety of music. I mean, from gospel, what I call big band music, the classics, the Ellas, the Sinatras. I mean, down to heavy rock, because he loved Jimi Hendrix and he loved Chicago, and I love music. So I've always been exposed to a really healthy, very variety appetite for multiple genres, and I've always loved doing it. As you said, when you hear my style coming out of what people know, me as a youngster, more in the calypso arena, you hear that jazzy soul, R&B style, which is very much a lot of my my style in a lot of, like, I could sing calypso with an R&B jazzy flavor. I could do pop, and like one of the songs that most people would know me for, my raga soca, and I keep telling people, you take that calypso beat off of it, and you put a pop R&B bed of music, it's an R&B song, because the way I sang it, it was very R&B-ish. So it's, my style has always lended to that when most people hear me sing, and I guess, you know, that's why others, as much as they know me, you know, my earlier words, they could connect to that side, because it's not that far if you really listen to the way I used to sing, even on soca. But I'm having real fun in this new side of me being exposed, because, as I said, this has always been me. But the general public is now only just kind of hearing that side. Like, I would often in my earlier stages or on the hotel circuit, persons would come in and they would have dinner and they'd be like, oh, I didn't know you could sing like that, you know? And I say, yeah. And they're surprised, because they all, you know, most of my recordings were just, you know, just calypso. But no, the majority of the Barbadian public and such are now being exposed. And I'm getting a lot of good support, and I really want to thank my fan base, because we are, as artists, we create, but the audience decides, you know.
True.
Exactly. So I am very grateful to my fan base. And I mean, there was a time when I took a bit of a break off of the public scene, and, you know, I would hear people saying, you need to come back out. And again, when I re-emerged after a bit of a while, I was still working. I was still very much in that, because I'm a full-time musician. But when people saw me come back out with, you know, Time and Tide, it was like, oh, this is a different side of KEISHA. So it was, yes, calypso, yes, but it was a more mature element of that younger artist that we knew. Wow. And then the transition, when they saw the Frank Collimer Hall show, like KEISHA Christian sings the classic, it was like, whoa, you know.
But what brought about that decision to perhaps take a pause, you know, reevaluate, you know, what did you, internalizing it, what do you think caused that change? Was it something that was calling to you?
You know, I had my son at the time, one, and then I was doing calypso, yes, but I always knew I wanted to do more. And I'm not one to be pigeonholed into a box, so I felt I love calypso. It's a part of me. It's where I started. It's a part of my dad. You know, it's a part of what we are. But we're a lot more than that, and I represent a lot more of that artistically. And then I started, you know, the hotel circuit, and I was allowed to kind of hone into all those songs that I grew up with and I loved and I enjoyed singing. I was allowed to then internalize them a lot more and perform. And it's like the music to me is you okay, like when I do a cover, you do a classic piece like say Knocking on Heaven's Door or One Day I'll Fly Away from Randy Crawford, you're hearing these songs all the time, but when you actually perform it, I usually like to kind of dissect a song and get into the words and feel the emotion, because then that's your job to try to translate that same emotion to the audience. Are you doing it effectively? You get into the song, and I love being able to do that with the music that I loved so much, you know, as well. And that's what started it for me. And yeah, I don't like feeling pigeonholed. Most creatives, we like to explore and spread our wings and just create.
And also we see that, I mean, reflected in your look, you know. You can look at the thing and say, oh man, she changes, you know, style,
I know, right?
hair, image, look, everything. So that's also part of you. But when you talk about look at performing there now, and that was well, three
This
years
is in China
ago.
with Arturo.
Well, talk to
We
me
did
about
a
that.
that was a real experience, boy. Let me tell you, it was really something. I mean, first thing first, just working with Arturo is one a pleasure. It's such a privilege. He is such an amazing artist. I mean, we brag and boast a lot, but he's achieved so much. When you have an iconic artist that in Luther Vandross, he was a part of that band, you know, Roberta Flack. He was in the, you know, you have video of Luther calling his name
True.
and highlighting him to, so you know, so that's the caliber of musicianship that comes with working with Arturo. And he's such a generous person in that he gives back so much. He's always willing to share, always willing to teach. And the work ethic is, you know, crazy in a good way. He's
What's it
such
like?
a good
What's
person
the
to be around.
work ethic like?
Oh, he don't joke when it comes to music. Anyone who's work with Arturo knows that. But he's pleasant, but he will hold you to it. He's not gonna let you sharpen. If he sees ability, he'll push. And you can only grow in an environment like that. And what I really love about Arthur, he's so always willing to teach, and that's important. And you know, going on the trip to China, I mean, it's a whole different culture, a different environment. We literally were like probably one, if not the only few black persons there, and the culture is so different. We were walking around, literally it was like celebrities. They were taking photos and pretending not to look and having the cameras all. It was different. And then they're not speaking your language, and you're asking yourself, are they gonna really, how are they gonna respond to this music? Because we did all Barbadian stuff, variety stuff too, which I liked. You know, it wasn't just calypso. It wasn't. We did a bit of everything, but Barbadian stuff, and they respond, and that's the magic of music. That's the magic of music.
It's the universal language.
I know. You know, I talk about it all the time, and I get goosebumps.
I have them.
Marley, and you know, you look at somebody like Bob all throughout the world. Don't care where you go, they can't speak a drop of English, but they sing his songs in English.
It's brilliant.
But that's and it's something about the melodies, and we just connect. You'll be surprised to see. I was surprised to see these Chinese dancing and moving to our rhythms, and it was lovely. It was
sweet,
humbling. It was encouraging.
Let's continue our chat after the break. We'll be back with Keisha Christian.
You tell me to forget. It's him I want my own children to grow. Alright, I say I shall go. I hope you know it's true. I will never forgive you, because look how what you do to my emotion. You tell me to forget. It's here I want my own children to grow. Alright, I say I shall go. Oh, you tell me to forget. You did the wrong things and then let my children know. Alright, I say I shall go. I hope you understand how I feel about everything. My homeland, my homeland, my homeland. I hope you know that it's true, that I will never, never, never forgive you. Oh, because look what you do to my emerson.
That is a signature, you know, that everyone knows now the world over. I think Gabby sent us 3 ladies from either Sweden or one of those Nordic countries performing that, you know. But to hear it done with a jazz styling and with soul, as opposed to that folksy rhythm, so it was different, and I enjoyed that, Keisha. I really did.
I am glad you guys did.
You know, and I know that you may not have grown up there, but it still touched a chord within you, as it does with us all.
Exactly. Again, when you have that, when you have respect for the work that you're gonna manage, you try to internalize what did the writer mean when they said that? What was the time? You know, when you look at that time in Barbados, what did that represent? How could that have felt? It's the same thing as film. Then you recreate, you know, something. It's like you basically are translating the message, the sentiment, the feeling, and you want to be able to do that efficiently and effectively when you touch somebody else's word, even your own, to be able to truly transcend that message. And that's a very serious song, and you know, so I was glad that I was able to do my take on it and it be received, you know, well, to one persons who would have lived in that time. And I needed to get that also from, you know, Gabby.
Of course.
And when I had his endorsement, I felt good, because it was like, this is one of his classic Barbadian pieces. I don't want to mess this one up. You know?
I think the thing though about Emerton, and yes, it is Barbadian, and it was a time in our history that impacted many, many lives. They had to shift from where they were living, be uprooted and planted somewhere else, you know, and yet still keep the heartbeat and the soul of who they were as a village, you know, and therefore, yes, people in France, in Germany, in Japan can relate to that because you know you may not be completely transplanted from where you were, and so but life shifted you, and you had to change within a different environment, but yet still remain true to who you were, you know. So it's universal, and as we said, music is universal. And I want to introduce a friend of yours, one of the friends from your virtual concert, David Thomas. David is a musician, and he's also a songwriter, and we're going to hear that song a little later on in the chat. But David, welcome to the Link Up. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Didn't know you could sing.
Well, many don't, but I try a thing.
I enjoyed it, by the way. I enjoyed it. We were talking about KEISHA, yes, but music in general. And I think that when we look at singers and we look at musicians, we realize that, you know, both are emoting, one vocally, but one through an instrument. So let's talk about your instrument, which you are known very well for, basically, although you have another one now in your voice. But, you know, how did you get involved in music? What called to you that you had to do this for a living?
Well, where should I start? I guess I was always into music. I was in the choir at school, at primary school, Wesley Hall Boys School. I was into music at secondary school as well, although not as structured. But I really did get into pop music. And then, of course, at church, I got into a cappella music. I honed my harmonies and so on there. And then soon in my late teens, I started to be really interested in the structure of music, the instrumentation, the arrangement, how they sound. And I found myself actually more attracted to the instrumentation than actually the words. I wouldn't even know the names of some songs or the lyrics to songs. Friends used to tease me about it, but I would know the riffs. And I would know the instrument.
Right.
And so on. It was really weird. Coming out of that, I was chorale director at my old church for a while, and then soon enough, I started to be very interested in telling our own stories, and that got me into songwriting. So I started with some very small, very short, 4-line choruses, if you will, that we can just sing at church, just casually. And then we expanded that.
Can
and
you
then
share
I wrote a couple
one?
songs for the chorale to sing.
Not crossing you. I do that. I'm sorry.
I don't remember that.
I put you on the
25
spot.
years ago.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't remember.
Understood. Understood.
Honestly, I remember them now. So soon after that, I started to write for myself. I started to get interested in the actual production. I got into computers. I discovered that you could actually make music with computers, which blew me away, and I was very excited about. And then I started to write an album for myself, actually. And after I was about 4 songs in, I discovered Dana. Some people may remember Dana, that people don't know. She was a young girl at my church at the time, and she had a beautiful voice. And it was a very unique voice. And I said that she would be better to sing these songs than I would be. So I basically gave her all my songs, and then we wrote another 5-6 songs, and we did her album.
Wow.
And then from there, other people started asking me to help them with stuff. I learned guitar, I learned a little keyboard, and I ended up doing a lot more production after that. And I suppose the rest is history.
What do you prefer? Which instrument do you prefer to play?
So I I am at heart a guitarist, I suppose, but I find I still just use instruments to write. So even when I learned guitar, the reason wasn't because I quote unquote liked guitar. It was because I liked writing. And I wanted to learn an instrument that could support my writing. So I wanted something that I could sit in my patio and just, write and sing at the same time. So many people consider me a guitarist. I actually don't like to call myself a guitarist, but I can play guitar.
Okay.
I basically play enough guitar to write my songs and get my productions done.
There are certain chords which, again, and KEISHA, I'm sure, can jump in on this, which, when you hear them, immediately you recognize a mood without a lyric or anything like that. And I think it was Shadow. He liked to perform in that E key down there, which immediately, and that always, I don't know, somehow set a mood. And so hearing you all and the call and response from the singer and the musician, I think a lot of that is what you have, but in normal music now, with all of the, not the mixes, what's the phrase that the hip people use now when they're all pre-programmed and all of that sort of thing? That's missing.
All the loops and samples.
Thank you. That's missing. And for me, it's the emotion, that depth that you get from the call and the response from the musician and the artist, the singer, that is what makes a song stand out.
Sure
And that's
in defense of loop and sample people, I will say there are ways to use loops and samples and still get that response.
Oh, very well.
So really and truly, it's about how you use the tools you have.
So is he technician then? Is he technician?
Yes. So loops and samples can make you lazy, and if you're lazy, then you miss being able to evoke that shadow emotion you were talking about. Because there are musicians who are very good at playing music with live instruments, and they evoke no emotion.
It's true.
So it is not purely the fact that they're a musician. You need to be able to use the tools at your fingertips.
But the fun that you have, KEISHA, with your musicians, you can see, that teasing quality and that sort of thing in your concert. That's so important. But is that something one learns, or is that something one is born with?
I think some people sing and like when you look at it, okay, let's come into your domain. Some people present, some people host. And they can give information, but then you have that presenter that really grabs you. You can't be taught that. You can be taught mass comm or whatever. You can certain, but there's certain traits that a person, to me, naturally has. Like as David said, they're musicians who play well, but you sit and you listen to them and say, okay, they played all the right notes, but it didn't quite grab you the same way. Just as he said, you can produce a piece and you can use the same technology, or you can play live, whatever. But it's having that not to be able to capture certain essences and certain qualities that, to me, a person, you have to have it. When people talk about Quincy Jones and stuff, you have to have it. When you look at Simon Cowell, he has that not to see raw talent. You have to have certain qualities. The information and you fine tune what you naturally have, to me. But there's some things that you can't be taught.
Yeah.
It's either you have it or you don't.
Yeah. It's like I like to talk about the photographers and that eye, you know. Yeah, you can
Correct.
you can learn all of the basics and so on, but there's still something that says you gotta be at least able to discern what you're looking at.
You gotta have it, exactly.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with KEISHA and David. Okay, seems as though Murphy has finally awakened. I hope he goes back to sleep. You know Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will. So we want him to go because we want to hear this. KEISHA, what a day.
Oh, what a blessed day it was when the master of Caribbean politics, went up to ensure Barbados got independence. Oh, what a day it was. Oh, what a day. When the whole of this island heard a rantom play, it was jubilation on the garrison. When they pulled on the British flags and raised our own. It was on the 30th of November 1966 a nation was born. I'm a Barbadian, we're an independent nation. A nation was born. This nation was born. Our nation was born. This nation was born.
Written by her dad, Keith Roy, and arranged by the arranger to the stars, Mr. Roger Gittins. Congratulations, Roger, if you're watching, on your award, well deserved. And KEISHA and David, talk to me about, we were talking about emotions. Let's discuss Barbados becoming a republic. I mean, for, you know, Barbadians everywhere, it's about time, you know, that we take on the full mantle and reins of the country. But what a celebration. You know, what a celebration.
Absolutely, it was. Yeah. I was actually very excited about it, to be honest. And I found the ceremony was a little more emotional than I even expected it to be. I was very moved, and I was actually on WhatsApp with some friends of mine who live overseas now for the last few years, and they were beyond emotion when they watched it with me on WhatsApp and stuff, and it really was affecting them. So I think we all were in that space for sure.
Yeah, and KEISHA, when you sing "Oh What a Day," you know, sharing the words, I'm sure, and experience of your dad.
Correct.
What a day it was for all of us who were there back in 1966. Some of us were 5 years old, and you know. and had the measles, so we missed most of that on the garrison and everything. But I can still remember, you know, bridging both the colonial and then going into the independence and now going into the republic, and so yeah. And when the clock was striking midnight was when that actual ceremony, they were standing there and the clock starts, you know, strike midnight. It was perfectly timed. You talk about emotion, that was really wild.
When you speak about it, even now, like you get goosebumps because you could only imagine. We spoke about the same Emerton. It's the same type of feeling. You reflect. Even I've heard that song before as a youngster, obviously with my father. But as you get older, you really internalize what those words mean. What could have been the emotion of the day. You know, life is a journey, and you pass through different elements, and you internalize them in different ways, and the struggle may be different, you know, from one person to another, but it, you know, it's, and these are the pieces of our culture and our history that we need to be very delicate in preserving, because all aspects of it is very important. And that's, you know, what we try to do, you know, too, with our music. Even this song was a part of the really modernization of Barbadian songs project with my team, and it was very timely. I always wanted to do a song with my dad, but you know, this was, you know, was even before we knew about the whole republic. This was very, you know, very timely, because the reverence that people most embrace around the same time, and to this generation, it will represent something different. Yes, a similar journey, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's important that we do our best to capture these elements of our transition, of our process and our journey as we continue to grow as Barbadians. You know.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that? Okay, let me word this properly, because it might come out sounding completely different, and then I'm going to get a whole set of WhatsApp messages. Do you think that there is a responsibility to you as an artist to not document, because that's historian stuff, but share musically what is happening now that will become history, if that makes sense? Or is that more the Calypsonian in you, the storytelling part, you know, whereas the jazz and so on, that's more heart?
You know, I think all creatives do it in different ways. You know, it's not, when you spoke about the music that touches you, when you hear it told a story. It wasn't calypso, but it told a story. When you hear a Marvin Gaye, look at Mercy Mercy Me. It wasn't calypso, but it told a story, and it represented the time, and a lot of it was love and heart, and that's a part of it too. But regardless of what we see, visual artists, they capture it in their, you know, in their work. Some people just want to just have a jam, and that has its place. Mm-hmm. And then there are other aspects of your music that you might say, you know what, let me be able to touch in this way. Let me be able to reflect a part of what we want to hold on to as a people this way. And I guess it's just up. It depends on where the artist's mind is at. But me personally, when I create, I want to be able to impact in a positive way, in a progressive way, in a healing way. You know, that's me. Tell a story.
Right. I'm gonna pose the same convoluted question to David, but right now I have my hand on my chin, because I'm gonna, you know, be the other Peta. Okay, and it may be my age, So forgive me, but there are stories sometimes that I don't think need to be told. And I am talking, forgive me, gangster rap. Okay, now the guns and the negative way that women are portrayed, I have problems with that. So that's a personal bias, forgive me. But David, same convoluted question. As a writer, is there a responsibility you have for getting stories out there?
I believe so. I believe artists should reflect what is going on around them. I know what I try to do is when I write, I may start with a very specific focus or idea, but then I try to broaden it so that it can be relevant to as much people and as worldwide as possible, so people can connect to it. That being said, there's still a place for individual societies or groups to tell their stories. You may not like the story, but that necessarily make the story any less valid.
I take your point.
You mentioned gangster rap. I'm not a fan of gangster rap either, but it tells of an era. It tells of a time. It tells of a reality of a certain group of people. We may not connect with it. We may not even like it. The public shouldn't be listening to it, but it is still it is still a moment or a period of time or a story from a particular group. It tells of a frustration. It tells of what is important to that people. Many times it speaks in a way, as most art does, or should. It speaks in a way that mere words isn't able to say. So you may not want to listen to a person in a press conference telling you, well, this is what's going on in my world. But you hear the song and then you get an idea. You may not like it, but it is what it is. You know, art. I had an argument with a friend one time where I posited that art is not necessarily something that is good. Art is something that affects you, and it could affect you negatively. So there's art that's ugly. That doesn't make it not art. So it all ends up being important.
I take your point, and those stories as well have to be told. But I did say that it's my personal bias, you know, and that's how it is. I remember someone who should remain nameless, who said, you know, if you don't particularly like this song, there's an off button, you know, there's a power cord for a reason, or if you don't particularly like something on a channel, there's a switch. You always have choices. You don't, if you know, if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to it.
There's also a case to be made for the evolution of art.
Right.
So sometimes art has to go through a really rough, negative point of growth before it can get to something greater. And sometimes you just have to let it grow.
There's something about the beat, though, very hypnotic. I must say that for it. So there is a plus, and you talk again about emotion, you know, highly emotive. So I do take your point, but I did say that it was a personal bias, and it might be because of my age and also because of the environment. Yeah, KEISHA.
No, and I take all of that, but I think I kind of get what you're trying to say, is that you don't like it because of the impact it has. And I understand this. Again, you have kids and you want to expose them, but even we as artists, sometimes that expression may be a call for help. That may be expression, may be like, you know what, this is where I'm at. And I think that we need to be able as a people to hear and be able to create avenues where we can kind of understand where this is coming from, and where I can probably be able to assist. You see what David talked about, that growth that is that you hear is they're reaching out for. It's like, I want to solve this. But this is the only way I know how to express. I don't have the answers. I think it's very important that we as a community, we still need to be able to manage how the more impressionable segments of our community, what they absorb, young kids in our mainstream where we can control. Yes, it's art, but they should not be bombarded with just negative. Like, you appreciate what you are exposed to, and if the only thing that you're exposed to is this, so much of our youngsters are so numb to just negative, it's killing it, this, that, and it's like that's their new norm. And we need to create balance, and where we can, that responsibility, I think, where we can, we need to allow those impressionable segments to understand there's an alternate to what you have been exposed to, and that's important.
Quite.
Important.
And one of the things that, let me just wear my other hat, that it is revolutionary, that music, and for that story to be told and to be heard, it needs to be told, so in all fairness. But I was just, literally, but I agree with both of you. Balance is the key. So let us remember the season, and let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's play that song that I have fallen in love with, and I'm sure that Barbadians will for many, many years, and we'll find out from the songwriter and the singer all about it when we come back.
Another year come and gone, so much ups and downs. I'm thankful to be standing here today. And even though things were lost, just let love conquer all. No better time to brighten someone's day. Just make them smile, love them to laughter. Because it's Christmas time, it's here again. The hope of the whole world came down at Christmas time. And Christmas time. and love is changing hearts again at Christmas time, at Christmas time. Maybe you've been apart from ones you loved a lot. Just hold on to the thought of that today. And true love never fails. This Christmas, let it live and touch the hearts of everyone along the way. And just make them smile, and love them to laughter. Because it's Christmas time, it's here again. The hope of the whole world came down at Christmas time, at Christmas time. 'Cause Christmas time is here again, and love is changing hearts again at Christmas time, at Christmas time. Just love every chance you get. Just love every chance you get. 'Cause Christmas time is here again. The hope of the whole world came down at Christmas time. Oh, and Christmas time. 'Cause Christmas time is here again. And love is changing hearts again at Christmas time. At Christmas time. Again. Oh, oh, oh. It's Christmas time. Oh, it's Christmas time again. Oh, it's Christmas. Yes, it's Christmas. Oh, I love that it is Christmas time. Christmas time is here again.
Thank you very much for that, David and Keisha. Really, I think that that's going to be staying with us for many, many Christmases to come. So, talk to me about It's Christmas Time, David. Starting first with the songwriter.
Well, last year, Keisha came to me, Keisha and her manager came to me to do a song for them, to write a song, something inspirational. Not this song, another song, yet to be released. And I think we had a good experience. We were very happy with the outcome and so on. And so as a sort of a side note, I said, you know what? I think we need a Christmas song. That was last year. Christmas to me is a very important time. And even though the topics are very easy to identify, it's very difficult to bring something different or something new or a different thought. And I was not feeling it for a little while, to be honest. And it took me a bit to really be inspired and what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And then this year, some stuff started really to impact on me, primarily because of the pandemic as well. I mean, we had a pandemic last year, but this year was a little different. And I really wanted to tell the story about how a lot of people were feeling. I was talking to a lot of friends. You have people at church and friends at work and so on. And a lot of people were feeling very lost and, missing family, friends that were overseas, not having the opportunity to travel, to connect. And I wanted to try to connect with that feeling, but still offer hope and joy in the situation that we're all in. So even the first couple of words, another year come and gone, and that everything. It was, this was a difficult year for many. But my thing was, remember the important thing is to show love. Let's try to get love to everyone. You could keep those that you love in mind, but continue to show love to everyone you meet. And let's go there and share some hearts, which was basically the core message of Christ coming at Christmas.
Which came first for you, the melody or the words?
The words, I tend to sit down with my guitar and write. So I tend to work out the chords, sing the melody, and write at the same time.
Wow.
So I would tend to do that for the entire song. So for example, the first time I sent a demo to KEISHA, it would have been myself singing and guitar only, and nothing else. So then once, she doesn't, then I would explore it musically and try to decide how to treat it. Which was actually funny enough. It was subconsciously influenced by the recording I did with KEISHA when KEISHA had her KEISHA Christian and Friends.
Yes.
Playing with the band. I had a good time with the band. Playing with her 3-piece band, and her jazz-oriented delivery actually influenced some of my instrumental choices, some of the instruments I chose. So like the drums are primarily a brush type kit, and it's a more simple pared down version, but then I added a little guitar to add that me element, I suppose.
I like it. I really do. And it reminded me of a quotation by the ever famous writer Anonymous, who said, what is Christmas? It is tenderness for the past, courage for the present, and hope for the future. So it hearkened, that to me. For you, Christmas time, what did it mean to you, KEISHA?
Just like you said, the words easily connect to a cross segment of individuals. You can, regardless of where you are, you can connect to this song. And I find that David, that's one of the reasons why we work with David, because he has that ability. And he said something in the interview that I didn't recognize. He started exploring his writing ability back at church, and he would just make these simple 4-line choruses. But I mentioned to management, I said he has the ability to be simple and connect in a very deep way. The way he writes and the way he goes about the production, his treatment of the song, I quite like, because it easily connects, and that was important for me. So the words they were easy to connect and resonate, and I sing what I feel, right?
Right.
So it was not a hard task to say yes. As he said, we wanted to do something last year, and again, energy has to be right. And when first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, this is it. Easy to connect to. I love it.
How important is faith to you both? I can imagine what Dave is going to say, because he's been saying it for almost the past hour. But how important is faith?
Oh,
I'm
big. I'm big on it. Anyone knows Pappy Christian? I come up in a very, we would say, religious and Christian background. I would say I'm more spiritual because I'm open to spirituality and the lifestyle. I find a lot of people get caught up with the religion, and they do not connect with what is supposed to be that spiritual lifestyle, which is important. And faith is a very big thing for me. Yeah, it is important. It is the foundation And it is what, even if you listen to the song, that is what is going to make a really bad situation give you that element of hope once you are grounded in faith.
Right. And David, how important is it
Yeah.
to you, even though you've forgotten the choruses you wrote? I can resist. I'm sorry.
Faith for me is actually fundamental. It's not just a side thing. So in all the music I write, I agree with KEISHA. I am not a fan of religion, because religion speaks of rules and regulations, and that is not what faith is about. Basically, faith is about love of Christ and following his and living him, letting him live through you. And the majority of what he spoke about was wisdom and love, and that is something that we need to get back to. So basically, when I write for anyone, I am always mindful of that truth. And I think once people hear that message of love, no matter the context, it can resonate with people. I also like the idea of meeting people where they are. So I've had some flack in the past about not being gospel enough, but
What is that?
but I really believe that you need to meet people where they are, and everyone is in church.
Right,
So we
but-
need to be able to connect with, people, and just let them know, there are people here, and God, of course, that love them.
What
so
is
I
being
tend to-
gospel enough, David? Sorry, I'm not quite sure where they're coming
well,
from. What
well-
is that?
But this is a whole other interview.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
I understand.
This harkens back to Dana and Dana's day when we did our album and so on. Many people, or most people, people like to categorize you. So people heard our stuff and called it gospel. And then there were other people who said it was not gospel. And so there were people who supported us, and there were people who actually were against us. We actually had flack from some churches, and then we had great support from other churches. And then we had great support from people outside the church, and vice versa. It was a very strange thing to be in, and all we were saying is we are speaking life. That's all we're doing. We're speaking life, we're speaking faith, and we're expressing our experiences and showing love. Full stop. That's it.
You're right. That's a discussion for another time, because I've been touching on it. People have been following, over the course of some months, because there are a lot of questions have been raised in this old head during the pandemic. Lots of questions as to the whys and the wherefores and that sort of thing. But when you say that people place sometimes a little bit too much on religion and not the message, and in walking the talk, yeah, that resonates, and perhaps that is a discussion that we can have. The pressure that we put on each other, and why, at the end of the day, why. I think of all of the criticisms of the group Hillsong, who have brought out so much music, so many choruses, so many memorable choruses, and yet take great criticism for them. So thank you for that. Listen out for me in the new year to talk about that. But let's just talk now about the other foundation. The word foundation came into it, and that's the foundation of family. I know KEISHA mentioned her dad a lot, but there are other members of your family, both of you. If you can share with us the importance of family and their support, especially at this time when perhaps you're not getting an opportunity to see or to touch base or to touch, to hug, you know. What's this journey been like? And KEISHA, I'll start with you.
I think if anything, the pandemic has really done is to cause people to really reflect and really think about a lot of the things that this fast-paced life has caused us to kind of take for granted. And when you mention family extends, you know, beyond what is that blood relative. Family is any relationship that supports in a sincere and meaningful way. And sometimes, how often, you know, I love this person, but when I say love, I always say love is when you it's beyond just, you know, a intimate relationship or, you know, you know what I'm saying.
I know.
I don't know if exactly. I don't want to exactly. And we often have it in mind to do, and we don't do it. And with this pandemic, with all the stress and all the pressures, sometimes we take for granted what we have, and we, you know, so it's important to reflect. It's important to, sometimes when you're so busy, it takes 2 seconds. You know what? David, I love you. I love your work. I think you're phenomenal. You know, Peta, I always admire you from a child and your impact when it comes to the theater arts and how you've allowed artists like the McNeils and stuff to these are things that we sometimes take for granted, and this pandemic has really forced us to kind of look deeper into it. And support is important, and we shouldn't take it for granted.
And we don't give enough support to each other, I think.
Exactly.
You know?
And I think sometimes people think about it. Sometimes people have it to say, they may think, but they don't outwardly express it. And with so much death in the air and stuff, it's like it's forcing to say, you know what? You're literally here today. And how many stories have you said, I saw this person this morning? So it forces you to say, like, let me express it. Let me let that person know. Let me do something that I wanted to do, that you know, let me live. Let me hold on. Let me embrace, you know. Let me try to reach out to somebody else and say, you know what? I went through this too, and I'm not going to be ashamed to say that might actually impact and support that person in a way that you never understood, you know, could. And sometimes just even when you hear people say, like, you know, things are so hard, they say, yeah, but like, you don't have to. It caused so much different things that we didn't figure could happen, and to allow situations of support. I saw a lot of support going on in the pandemic, things that otherwise people say, no, that can't happen. Like even with the schools, look at school online. How many underprivileged school students you know about that did not have access to electronic devices? And because of the pandemic, there was no question if it could or couldn't be done. It had to be done. And we got it done. So it shows that we can do so much more if we can just reflect and be a little more considerate and act on what we have inside, you know. So that's a great spot for us to wrap upon. Thank you, KEISHA. Thank you for sharing yourself. Thank you for sharing your talent. Goodness knows what a talent it is. And, you know, sharing some of your life with us here on the Link Up. And you too, David. Thank you for popping in. It was really, really nice having you with us. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the music and this Christmas song. And I am sure it's going to live on forever. So thank you for that. Happy Christmas to you both. Stay safe and stay well. And you the same.
Thank you. We're going to be back after the break.
In Christmas time, 'cause Christmas time is here again. Just love every chance you get.
For that, we did promote it, and hopefully we'll see what happens if she is available next week, if we can talk then. But it was a highly informative and entertaining day today nevertheless. Thank you so much, to our guest, Dr. MEHTA in Florida, and also KEISHA and David right here in Barbados. Beautiful song for Christmas. We're going to play a little of it up to the hour. So thank you very much for joining me today. Continue to stay safe, stay well, and a Merry Christmas. All right, so we're going to play that Christmas time, just to take us into the news at noon. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Brighten someone's day, just make them smile, love them to laughter, because it's Christmas time, it's here again, the hope of the whole world came down at Christmas time, and Christmas time, 'cause Christmas time is here again, your love is changing hearts again, and Christmas time, and Christmas time. Maybe you've been apart from one ones you love the lot. Just hold on to the thought of that today. And true love never fails. This Christmas, let it live and touch the hearts of everyone along the way.